where any office boy or young mechanic can be a panic with just a good-looking pan. And any shop girl can be a top girl here at Businessland. Hooray for Hollywood! You may be
Well, hello, good evening. Welcome to Movie Mania. My name is Ed Hulse, and we have got so much show for you tonight, I hardly know where to begin, so we're going to make it quick. My very special guest tonight is one of the most distinguished men in the field of animation, theatrical and television animation. His name is really legendary as a craftsman. It goes right up there with the other gentlemen we've talked about on the show before, like Tex Avery and Chuck Jones and all the rest of them. And this man sitting to my left is probably, well, he may be the greatest animator, really, of all time. That sounds like a fair assumption. I'm talking, of course, about Preston Blair, who was our very special guest this evening. Very nice to have you with us. Well, we have got so much material to cover. Let's get right into it.
Let me help you out.
First of all, let's get a little background very quickly. How did you break into the animation field? Who did you work with first?
I started in Universal with Walter Lantz way back in the 30s. And that was in the Carl Laemmle period. Right. And Tex Avery was working there at that time. Jerry Geronimi and a lot of the other fellows. And I was there just about a year. Then I went over to Columbia Pictures. And from there I finally went to I decided to take the business seriously. Before this time I was just working like a fellow would be with a job in a garage or something like that. And I figured, well, I better take the business seriously after I'd seen some of our products. And I went over to the Disney studio and happened to be there during the golden era. And that's what we're going to be talking about tonight and what we have at the Whitney Museum this time. And I was there until in the 40s, and after that I went over to Metro, and for a while I was with Tex, animating his epics and his Red Hot Riding Hood Girls, and the short that we're going to be seeing tonight called Jerky Turkey. And then I directed this character here, Barney Bear, for a while, and after that I decided to become an illustrator, so I went to Westport. But that's another story, and as is my experience in the last many years as a cartoon producer.
Well, that covers a lot of territory.
Yeah, but we've got enough to talk about with
you bet.
This material that's cogent to the Whitney Museum show.
Right.
Right.
We want to mention that right away, right off the bat, that there is a tremendous, tremendous exhibit of Walt Disney material here in New York at the Whitney Museum, and that exhibit is running through September 6th. And we recommend that if you have not been over there yet, run, don't walk to the Whitney Museum, because not only can you see films from the Disney period, prime theatrical period, but you can also see great, great, great artifacts, drawings, cells, some of which we're going to be seeing tonight, by the way. Preston, you have right there a model.
I have a model that was used to animate the hippo. And this is a character I designed for Fantasia. And this little girl here is called Hyacinth.
Hyacinth. And
she does her little ballet in Fantasia with the greatest of ease. And these are designed based on these model sheets that we made here too.
We'll be taking a look at those in just a minute.
This is the other character here of the hippo, and you can see how she is a naturally designed dancer. You can see that.
Now, what are these? Are these plaster of Paris? Or,
these are the original. They're plaster of Paris, and they've been painted to resemble the color of the character.
But these were actually made now for the animators to work
from. These are the original model sheets that I made here of the character.
All right, but the animators actually did they draw from these?
We drew from these models, and we drew from the model sheets. We used live action, of course, and we used dead reckoning. When you animate, it's a calculated thing, and you use every bit of research that you can possibly get.
Right.
And that was one of the secrets of their success. They were very strong on research. They had all sorts of people. They even had James Wong Howe photographing research for them at that time. And we had a research of a very heavy elderly ballerina jumping around for this character here. But of course, the humor in the thing is in the animation and the straight ahead and the pose test animation that this character involves.
I hope she didn't recognize herself when she saw this.
Oh no, there's all sorts of things like that. The Geppetto was a Christian Rug. In Pinocchio, Christian Rug was based on an actor by the name of Christian Rug is the actor.
Right.
And Geppetto is based on him. And he can recognize himself in that character, but the other characters, of course, are lost. And this Fox and the Cat here had famous actors that helped them out. And we studied all these people, every little action that they had. In fact, Walt himself, I remember doing a thing on the Whalers and the Pointer. And I was called in there and to see the great boy himself go through the contortions of the thing. And then you would study these things and try to get it into the animation, and also put your imagination in there, which this studio was very famous for. It still is. And that is why these classics that we're talking about really hang together. You know, you see, there's just nothing that they're just like just like a novel, you know. The novel, Tom Jones was the first novel of a detective story, or I mean that type of a novel. It's not a detective story, it's a type of a novel. And it's never been equaled, but there's been many other kinds. And the same way with these things here. They're a thing of their own, but there'll be other great cartoons as time goes on, I'm sure.
Oh, well,
and I hope so.
Let's take a look right now, very quick, at some videotape footage of some very, very rare pencil test footage. We're going to show this real quick. This happens to be, I hope the light isn't glaring too badly on this. This is a stat of the original pencil drawings made by Preston Blair for Fantasia, and we're going to be seeing
Mickey and the Sorcerer's Apprentice.
And we're going to be seeing this scene as it appeared on film, the original test footage that Walt decided to
what you're looking at here is something from the Cartoonist Profiles magazine. This is just a proof from one of their magazines. But what you're going to look at is how it appears in a pencil test on your test that ensues.
Well, inasmuch as that does not have sound, let's talk right over that. So you can run that pencil test anytime. And Preston, as I understand, that
then carried the idea to the point where it was going to be Fantasia, and then very few people know that Fantasia was only the beginning step of a project that was going to be like the Ballet Russe de Monte Carlo. We were going to be able to go to a show every evening and see a different Fantasia every night for a week. And this project is still in the drawing board stages, and maybe one of these days it'll come to being. I hope so.
So now,
in other words, there's 3 or 4 episodes in Fantasia that have never been shown. They're just in the wings waiting to be shown.
Now, is there pencil material or animation drawings on this?
They're just part of them was made and then they're abandoned because at that time the financial problems were just horrendous in that studio, of course.
Fantasia was a long and costly undertaking.
It was, and it didn't make it didn't get its money back. But of course, it's gone on to history now, and it's a classic that'll go on for hundreds of years, I'm sure.
Sure. As long as film will go on, Fantasia.
Just like this novel Tom Jones I was talking about, go on for hundreds of years. But this film that we've just seen, I think, was the very first start, just by coincidence. I just happened to pick this thing up by coincidence. And
so
I picked that up. And we had an athlete working. We used an athlete from UCLA to jump over barrels in this scene. And we studied this action, and I followed his robes. And that helped out. with the action of this scene that you've just seen. You're jumping through the water there, and a lot of effects animation was put in, of course, to this with this of the animation that had to be put with the backgrounds to make it work out.
Well, it's fascinating. It's a classic, as we've said. It's an enduring masterpiece. And we're going to be seeing some more examples. We're going to be seeing those model sheets of the hippos later on. But now we're going to skip ahead a few years to an MGM short circa 1945. Whoops. Whoa. There goes one of our posters. And right now, we are going to... Folks, this is it. This is real television. We're not going to fake this.
Post up a bed and just forget about the poster. We'll fix it.
Oh, okay. All right, fine. Well, we're going to go to this clip right now, which is a cartoon which was originally Preston Blair animated under the direction of Tex Avery, right?
Yes, and we're going to show you the original model sheet of this cartoon. And before we, after you see the cartoon, I want to show you some of the action from the cartoon.
Terrific. Let's do that right now. Let's see a few minutes from a 1945 MGM cartoon, Jerky Turkey. That, of course, was from the year 1944. I stand corrected. I had said 1945, but that's Jerky Turkey, which was produced and directed by Ted Avery and animated by Preston Blair. We have here the original model sheet for the character of Pinhead from Jerky Turkey, and as you can see, these are...
You can recognize the line in there of the famous New Yorker cartoonist Claude. His name is Claude Smith. And this was before his career at the New Yorker. He was the model man in the Avery for that short that you just seen. So the talent there was extensive.
Oh, I can well imagine.
Here's another character that Claude designed called Screwball Squirrel, and this was an Avery success. Avery had the idea that he was going to make that this character was going to become another Bugs Bunny. Of course, it didn't work out that way. But the antics of this fellow, of course, are famous, you know.
Oh yes, animation buffs everywhere are very fond of the Screwy Squirrel. And Screwy is probably the only character that actually gets killed off in one of his own cartoons. They killed him away. They did away with him.
Right. Here's another picture of the model sheet, in which Hiawatha becomes the same character we saw in the last short, and this is another picture in which this character appears, another model sheet of another picture.
Now, how was it working at MGM in terms of time, monetary considerations? Did you find it pretty much the same as Disney, or was it a different kind of a shop?
Well, I went there on when I went to Disney's, it was a very competitive situation. There were a lot of people there. When I went to MGM, I was practically back on the outside of the business, and I was much better known. I was a director at MGM.
Right.
And I had known Avery many years before, and we really had a wonderful time. Working there during the war was a real ball. That was one of the real experiences of my life, and I really Avery was a great and a funny cartoonist, and we greatly miss him.
He passed away last year.
He passed away last year. He was working with Hanna-Barbera at the time, and we had a lot of fun there doing these things.
During that 40s period, you and Tex created quite a sensation with a character which animation buffs refer to as the girl character.
Yep.
She appeared in several shorts, little Red Hot Riding Hood, and Preston has graciously brought from his own archives some of the...
Well, here she is. You can take a look at her.
Now, I think what we have to do is tilt that a little bit forward so the light doesn't... Oh, that's okay like that.
Yep.
Now we're getting a look here at the wolf. So the premise of this was that there was a wolf, a lecherous character, who was crazy about this girl.
This was a Red Hot Riding Hood, and the story was based on a Peter Arno type grandmother instead, who was crazy about wolves. And it started out that way, but we animated this girl, and the reaction of the wolf to the girl was a tremendous success. And we started in and we animated a few scenes, and Avery realized that something was going to happen with this cartoon. And when this cartoon was first released, they showed it in theaters in New Jersey and places like that, and it created such an uproar that they were forced to stop the feature and run back and run over the cartoon. So as a result, then Metro then jumped on the bandwagon and ran full-page variety ads on this cartoon, and there were several other versions of Red. And I had a wonderful time drawing this girl. I spent a lot of time putting this beautiful limbs together, you know,
we can well
in
imagine.
animation. So it was a lot of fun.
As we can see here, this is actually, this colored drawing appearing next to the magazine reproductions is actually part of the original cell, the original animation cell that was used for that. And let's see, you have some of these ads here. Oh, here's something we want to get to. This is nice because this is something you don't see anymore. This is something you won't see on TV because it's dated and propagandistic, supposedly.
This was Avery's first short when he went to Metro from MGM, and it was during the war. And he made this short called Blitzwolf, in which the wolf was Hitler. And Hitler was attacking the 3 pigs in their den. And of course it was it was a hilarious farce. And we had a lot of fun with this one.
Now this would have been around what year?
This was around 1942, something like that.
And something that you'll never see anymore.
Something like that.
The last frame, the end title, it says "The End of Adolf," with the legend beneath, "If you'll buy a stamp or bond, we'll skin that skunk across the pond," referring to Hitler. And that was, of course, characteristic of the sentiment of the era, and it got in everywhere.
Here he is here again, Adolf in his strut, and this is a picture of one of the pigs.
Now this again looks like from the original cells.
This is a storyboard here from Pinocchio of the Fox and the Cat that I animated, singing "Hi Diddly Dee" in Actor's Life for Me. So I've got all sorts of things in this book. We could spend an hour and a half talking about them here.
We could. We've got all kinds of material.
Here's the owl in Bambi that told the thumper and the deer all about love in the famous Twitter-pated speech, and that was a lot of fun to do too. And then this, of course, here is our drawings from that are now at the Whitney Museum. These drawings here of the
These are again of the hippo.
Yeah, these are at the Whitney Museum. Let's see the cover. I have a new book here.
Let's plug the book by all means. This is the original edition.
That is the original edition. And
Advanced animation.
Where is the other original book now?
Here we go as our technicians rush these.
This is the cover of the new book that I've brought out, and this is the other book that is now over 1 million. This is a textbook on animation that's used in the various schools and colleges throughout the country, and it has a picture of the alligators in here, a beginning alligator, and it also has a lot of drawings of Red Hot in here too.
Here we go. Let's get to this. This is really, and I say this without any exaggeration, this is a treasure trove of material for those of you who are interested in the work of Preston Blair. It has marvelous, marvelous illustrations, many of them in color, and besides just as a how-to manual, it's a real collector's item, and it's well worth the price. We recommend that you get this. This is a new edition, right?
This is a new edition.
And this is really, for those of us who can't afford the hundreds of thousands of dollars that original cells and artwork bring, this is as good as anything.
Well, I just talked to Frank Thomas just now,
right?
And his new book is coming out, and I also recommend that. It's called Disney Animation, The Illusion of Life. And it's a beautiful book. It's going to come out in the middle of September, but it is going to sell for $50. These sell for $2.
So we'll leave it to you. What's the better buy?
But I would, if anybody's serious about the business, I know they'll get this book as the beginning one, and this other one augments that. And of course, they would buy the Frank Thomas book too, if they're interested in the business, or anybody that's interested in animation.
Let's do an anecdote, if we can do it real quick in 1 minute, of what happened to you after you originally brought out this first edition. You had an experience there.
Well, I started out with this thing. I thought I was could use a lot of the characters without any rights, because I'd been doing a lot of that sort of thing in publicity there. And I put together this book, and I got sort of in a crossfire between the Disney studio and the MGM studio, and I had to redo this book with a different character. So this, right. the one that is the main book is has most of these things in it, but the characters have been changed.
So in other words, you couldn't use those famous name characters?
I couldn't use these, a lot of the characters. I had to change the characters, but they're very easy to change, and we had no trouble at all in getting the thought across that's in this, the animation, the story that we want to tell in each page about how to animate in the feature that we're talking about. These things cover all sorts of things: timing, character, and acting, drama, gestures, composition. Actually, an animated cartoon is nothing more than just a drawn motion picture. I want to say that over again.
Well, that's as good a point as any to end on. We've been grabbed by the clock.
Right.
But I want to thank you very much, Preston Blair, for being with us.
It's been a pleasure working with you.
Thank you. And we want to remind you again that Disney exhibit at the Whitney Museum through September 6th. This is Ed Hulse, and we'll be back next week for more Movie Mania.
Hooray for Hollywood, that's gooey bally hooly Hollywood, where any office boy or young mechanic can be a panic with just a good-looking plan. And any shop girl can be a top girl here at businessman. Hooray for Hollywood, you may be homely in your neighborhood. They look good. Go out and try.
Just have them cue us.
Say, now these are the production model sheets of...
And of course, while we're talking about the Disney Studios and Fantasia, let's take a look at these rare model sheets of the hippo, which were drawn by Preston Blair.
Now these are the production model sheets. Disney left no stone unturned, and he's had a model department that made model sheets, and other story people made model sheets. There are 3 or 4 different varieties of these, but these are the model sheets that were designed by yours truly, and they are the production model sheets of the hippo in Fantasia. Your name is Hyacinth.
And this was modeled after the work of?
Heinrich Kley. We were very interested in Heinrich Kley, who was a famous Viennese artist. And Walt tried to follow along. He was very impressed with Heinrich Kley. And all of you cartoonists would know who Heinrich Kley is. But we later on changed the character so that it was a little bit more in the cartoon vernacular, because there's so many artists working on it. Right. Heinrich Kley is almost impossible to animate. You know, everybody you can't have a whole studio of little Heinrich Kleys working like crazy.
Hardly.
That's the trouble with animation. A lot of people have got to work on it, and maybe that's a blessing, because the drawings then have a tendency towards the direct and the simple and the straightforward.
How many people would you say at the busiest time were working on Fantasia, all together, all told?
Well, that's a little bit fast for me to say, but I think the studio, they had a payroll there of a couple of thousand. They must have. And that was one of their problems. They had all these tremendous people that became cartoonists, and directors, and whatnot, New Yorker cartoonists that we were talking about of Claude Smith, and their features were a great success, but they just couldn't keep all these people going, and that was the sad part of it. They had to finally call a stop to this golden period, and the talent there was just like a USC football team. There are 10 or 15 quarterbacks in the wings, you know. And I want to tell you, I had a tremendous job doing these hippos. I had to make a lot of tests and the things. The competition was tremendous there, and wow. That's the way it. That's the. There's a lot of these things about these famous pictures, live action pictures, and about these cartoons that you don't realize that when they were made, there was a lot of activity there that was quite intense. They weren't just casually knocked off, right, like any Hitchcock picture. You just don't make a Hitchcock picture or a Disney feature by just saying, hey, I got an idea, let's knock this thing off. It requires a lot of talent. But on the other hand, the inspiration of just one or two people does it. And you don't have to have a million people to do these things. It's been proven.
Right.
If you have few people, it takes longer to do it. Sure. But there's no reason at all why just a few people here in New York or wherever they may be in New Orleans or any place can't get together and make a cartoon feature. And I am really with them. God bless every one of them.
That's and we agree naturally. Do you think now this may be something that you didn't have any involvement with, but do you think, as far as you can remember, that there was a time, I should set this up by saying that Disney, of course, had taken a tremendous gamble with the first full-length animated feature in Snow White, and Fantasia being the undertaking that it was. I think it took 2 years to make altogether. Do you think there was a time when Walt said, wow, I'm really in over my head, we're never going to be able to finish this, and I'm just going to be, you know?
I think there's a little story about that that's quite different than the way you pictured it. The story is that Walt was in his room and he called up Roy, and they were in real financial straits. Just the picture that you're talking. So Roy came in, and the story goes that Walt looked at Roy, and all of a sudden he burst out laughing. He just couldn't control himself, and he says, to think that a couple of yokels from St. Louis are here and we're into the Bank of America for $7 million. Well, of course they got their money back and much more.
Sure they have now.
I hope all you folks out there can raise the $7 million and make more cartoons.
Oh, well, we can do that by tomorrow. We'll get into that tomorrow.
Go to it, man.
We'll move ahead to the MGM period, and we'll be showing some scenes from Jerky Turkey, which was a 1944 cartoon, which Preston Blair animated under the production and direction of the late Tex Avery. So let's go now to Jerky Turkey. Is that it? Is that a good enough segue, gentlemen?